I knew the smell of disaster before I saw the code. It doesn't smell like smoke or ozone. In the corporate logistics world, disaster smells like fresh paint and expensive, cloying vanilla perfume masking the scent of incompetence. It was 4:45 a.m. on a Tuesday. I was sitting in what they call the director's office, which is really just a glass cage overlooking the server farm on one side and the logistics pit on the other. I had a cup of coffee that was blacker than my ex-husband's soul and about as bitter. On the monitors in front of me, the beast was sleeping. That's what I call the fleet. 5,000 18-wheelers scattered across the lower 48 states, currently idling in rest stops, docking at warehouses, or burning diesel on lonely stretches of I-80. To the suits upstairs, these trucks are just cells on a spreadsheet. To me, they are blood cells in a body I built from scratch. I wrote the routing algorithms back when the cloud was just something that ruined a picnic. I hard-coded the handshake protocols between the warehouse scanners and the driver tablets while nursing a newborn and a divorce 20 years ago. I was running my standard dawn audit, a script I wrote that checks for unauthorized API calls when I saw it. A blip, a jagged little red line in a sea of green tranquility. Someone had been poking around the root directory. Now, before I tell you how I ended up holding a billion-dollar company by the balls and squeezing until they cried, do me a solid, hit subscribe and smash the upvote. It motivates the team to keep finding these stories. Anyway, back to the red line. The login credential used wasn't one of my sysadmins. It wasn't the CTO, a man whose understanding of technology ended with setting the clock on his microwave. The username was new. User T Vanderbilt VPO admin access level. Unrestricted time 02:15 a.m. Vanderbilt, the owner's last name. I sat back in my chair, the leather creaking like old bones. We had heard rumors, of course. The water cooler gossip was that old man Vanderbilt's daughter, Tiffany, had finally finished her studies in Europe, which I assumed was a degree in spending daddy's money on handbags that cost more than my car, and was coming home to learn the family business. I took a sip of the sludge in my mug. Learn the business usually meant sitting in a corner office for 6 months, attending 2 meetings, and then getting promoted to a VP role where they couldn't break anything important. But access level, unrestricted, that wasn't learning. That was an invasion. I started digging. I pulled the keystroke logs, you see. The thing about people who are born on third base is that they think they hit a triple, but they don't know how to slide. Tiffany, because it had to be her, hadn't just logged in to look. She had tried to change the permission hierarchy. She had attempted to grant herself super admin status over the dispatch core. The system, my beautiful, paranoid, grumpy beast, had rejected her. Why? Because 20 years ago, I wrote a failsafe. A frantic, caffeine-fueled piece of code dubbed the dead man's switch. It required a physical token authentication for any root-level changes. A token that was currently sitting on my keychain, shaped like a glittery cat, looking innocent and tacky. She had hit a wall, and judging by the timestamp, she had probably thrown her MacBook across her penthouse loft in frustration. I lit a cigarette. Yeah, I know, you can't smoke indoors anymore. Tell that to the fire alarm I disabled in 2008. I blew a plume of smoke at the monitor. This wasn't just a nosy heiress. This was a hostile takeover of the engine room by someone who didn't know the difference between a transmission and a tailpipe. My phone buzzed, a calendar invite. Subject, org structure realignment / synergy sync host, Tiffany Vanderbilt time, 9:00 a.m. today location. My office synergy sync. I almost laughed. It sounded like a lubricant for robots. I looked out at the logistics floor. The early shift dispatchers were starting to trickle in, coffee cups in hand, headsets going on. They were good people. They knew that if the system flashed yellow, they called me. If a driver was stuck in a snowstorm in Dakota, they called me. They didn't know that the ground beneath them was about to turn into quicksand. I didn't panic. Panic is for people who don't have backups. Panic is for people who trust HR. I don't trust anyone who uses the phrase human capital unironically. Instead, I opened my bottom drawer. Beneath a stack of takeout menus and a spare pair of flats, there was a small, unassuming external hard drive. It was an encrypted mirror of the legacy architecture, the real architecture. The stuff the vendor documentation didn't cover because the vendor didn't write it, I did. I plugged it in. The drive hummed, a low, mechanical purr. All right, sweetheart, I whispered to the screen. Let's see what you tried to break. I spent the next 3 hours not working but cleaning. I wasn't cleaning my desk. I was cleaning the digital fingerprints of my ownership. I wasn't erasing the system, I was decoupling it. Imagine a house where the wiring looks normal, but the light switches only work if you know the secret knock. I was setting the house to sensitive. I moved the critical routing tables to a partitioned server that looked like a junk archive. I rerouted the DNS pointers through a loop that required a specific handshake, my handshake. I wasn't sabotaging the company, not yet, I was just taking my tools home. If a mechanic gets fired, he doesn't leave his snap-on chest for the apprentice who thinks a wrench is a hammer. He packs his shit. By 8:45 a.m., the office was buzzing. The air felt different, heavier, people were whispering. I saw the HR director, a spineless weasel named Greg who sweat through his shirts if you made eye contact, hovering near the elevators. He looked like he was waiting for an executioner, or maybe he was the executioner. I saved the last config file to my external drive, ejected it, dropped it into my purse next to my lipstick and my pack of Marlboro Lights. I stood up, smoothed out my blouse, and walked to the window. Outside, down in the loading bay, I watched Truck 4059 back into Dock 4. Perfect alignment. Poetry in motion. Enjoy it while it lasts, I muttered. The elevator dinged, the doors opened, and out stepped the future. She was wearing heels that were too high for warehouse floor and a smile that was too bright for Tuesday morning. Game on, princess. Tiffany Vanderbilt didn't walk, she pranced. She was 25 years old, holding a latte that cost more than the hourly wage of the drivers she was about to command, and she was flanked by Greg from HR and 2 security guards who looked embarrassed to be there. She swept into my office without knocking. The scent of vanilla intensified, choking out the lingering tobacco smoke. She looked around my space, the piles of manifests, the 3 monitors glowing with command lines, the framed photo of my dog, with a look of mild disgust, like she had stepped into a petting zoo. Monica, she said. Her voice was high, airy, and dripping with condescension. So good to finally meet the legacy team. I didn't stand up. I swiveled my chair slowly. Tiffany, nice of you to visit the engine room. Be careful not to touch anything. The grease doesn't wash out of silk. She blinked, her smile faltering for a millisecond before reattaching itself. She placed her latte on top of a stack of critical invoices. I stared at the cup. Condensation was already forming a ring on the paper. We're making some changes, Monica, she said, clasping her hands. Daddy, I mean the board feels that the logistics division has become stagnant, archaic. We need to pivot to a more agile, AI-driven paradigm. Agile, I repeated, tasting the word like sour milk. You mean like the drivers or the trucks? Because 18-wheelers aren't agile, Tiffany. They weigh 80,000 pounds and take a football field to stop. See, that's the attitude, she sighed, looking at Greg. Greg looked at his shoes, that resistance to modernization. We've brought in a new vendor, CloudLogix. They're going to streamline everything, fully automated, no more. She gestured vaguely at my screens. Whatever this matrix code is. CloudLogix, I said. I know them. They manage delivery scooters for hipster pizza places in Brooklyn. They haul industrial steel and frozen poultry across 4 time zones. Scale is just a number, she said dismissively. Anyway, we're restructuring. Your role is being sunsetted, like I was a porch light. Is that right? I asked. Greg finally spoke up, his voice cracking. We're offering a generous severance, Monica. 2 weeks pay for every year served. But it's contingent on an immediate handover of all credentials and a signed NDA. Tiffany stepped forward, invading my personal space. I'll be taking over as VP of Operations, effective immediately. I'll need your badge, your laptop, and your keys. Security will escort you out. She expected a fight. She expected me to scream, to cry, to throw the do-it-for-her plaque off my wall. She wanted a scene because scenes reinforce the narrative that the old guard is emotional and unstable. I looked at her, really looked at her. I saw the hunger for validation in her eyes. She didn't want to run logistics, she wanted to be the boss. There's a difference. I stood up. My knees popped. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my key card. I unclipped the master key that opened every server rack in the building. Okay, I said. Tiffany blinked. Okay, you're the boss, I said. I dropped the keys into her latte. Splash. Coffee speckled her white blazer. Hey, she yelped. Oops, not very agile of me, I deadpanned. I grabbed my purse, the one with the external drive. I didn't touch the laptop. The laptop is company property. It's all yours. The passwords are on a sticky note under the keyboard. Standard security practice, right? Wait, she said, sensing something was too easy. We need a debrief. You need to walk me through the daily protocols. I laughed. It was a dry, rasping sound. You have CloudLogix, Tiffany. They're streamlining everything. You don't need my protocols. You're modernizing. I walked past her. I stopped at the door and looked back at Greg. Greg, make sure my final check is direct deposited. I don't want to have to come back here. Monica, wait, Greg started. Goodbye, Tiffany, I said. Don't forget to feed the beast. It gets cranky when it's hungry. I walked out onto the logistics floor. The hum of conversation died. 50 dispatchers looked up. They saw me with my purse, no badge, walking toward the exit with security trailing me like I was a shoplifter. Jerry, my lead dispatcher, stood up. Monica, where are you going? I've got a situation in Omaha. I paused. I looked at Jerry. He was a good man. He had 3 kids and a mortgage. I felt a pang of guilt, but I shoved it down deep, right next to my love for my ex-husband. Ask Tiffany, I said loud enough for the whole room to hear. She's the VP of Operations now. She's got a new paradigm for Omaha. I pushed through the double doors. The security guard, a kid named Mike who had once helped fix a flat tire in the parking lot, looked apologetic. I'm sorry, Monica, he muttered. Don't be Mike, I said, putting on my sunglasses even though we were indoors. Just do me a favor. Don't order anything online for a while. I walked to my car, a beat-up Ford Explorer that had seen better days. I tossed my purse on the passenger seat. I sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel. My heart was hammering, but not from fear. It was adrenaline. I pulled my phone out. I opened an app that looked like a calculator but wasn't. It displayed a countdown. System handshake timeout, 23:59:59. They had 24 hours. That was the grace period I'd programmed in case of server failure. If the master key, the digital one on my drive, didn't ping the server within 24 hours, the system would assume a catastrophic breach. It would go into fortress mode. I started the car. I needed a drink, and I needed to book a hotel room, somewhere with really, really good Wi-Fi. I checked into a Motel 6 about 10 miles from HQ. It wasn't the Ritz, but it had a desk, a coffee maker, and it smelled like lemon disinfectant and bad decisions, my comfort zone. I set up my command center, my personal laptop, the external drive, and a prepaid burner phone. I cracked open a bottle of cheap Pinot Grigio I'd picked up at a gas station. Classy, I know, but when you're orchestrating the collapse of a supply chain, you don't drink champagne. You drink the stuff that tastes like battery acid and grapes. I spent the afternoon watching daytime TV and monitoring the passive readouts on my laptop. The beast was still humming. Legacy protocols were running on the cached instructions I'd left behind. Trucks were moving. Deliveries were being signed for. To the naked eye, everything was fine. I could see Tiffany's digital footprints. She was logged in as admin. She was changing things, cosmetic things. She changed the dashboard color scheme from eye strain green to corporate blue. She renamed the master dispatch folder to fulfillment hub. Cute, I muttered, pouring another glass. Rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. Night fell. The 24-hour countdown was ticking. System handshake timeout, 06:00:00. I slept like a baby who knows the house is rigged to explode. I woke up at 5 o'clock a.m. This was the witching hour. In logistics, 5 o'clock a.m. is when the world wakes up. The East Coast drivers are starting their engines. The warehouse managers are printing the pick lists for the day. The just-in-time delivery windows are opening. I sat at the desk, coffee in hand, eyes glued to the screen. 05:15 a.m., the first text came in on the burner phone. I hadn't given the number to anyone, but I had set up an automated alert for critical system latency. Alert, Node 4 Atlanta failing to handshake. I switched to the visualization tool. A small red dot appeared on the map in Georgia. 05:30 a.m., Tiffany logged in. I saw the activity spike. She was probably getting calls. User, T Vanderbilt VPO admin executing command, /refresh all. She was hitting the refresh button. Bless her heart. 05:45 a.m., the automated dispatch queue failed to launch. This is the script that tells 5,000 drivers where to go next. Without it, they are just guys sitting in trucks with no instructions. They can't move cargo if they don't know where it's going. The digital manifest is legally required for interstate transport. No manifest, no movement. The map on my screen started to light up with red dots like it was catching the measles. I could imagine the scene on the ops floor. The phones would be starting to ring. Not the polite rings of administrative questions, but the frantic, continuous ringing of angry warehouse supervisors. Hey, my scanners are dead. Hey, the drivers can't log into the ELD electronic logging device. Hey, the gate won't open because the system can't verify the load. 06:00 a.m., the timer hit 0. System lockdown initiated. Protocol scorched earth. The screen flashed. Then it went dark, not powered off, just dark. The telemetry feeds cut out. The ghost system I was monitoring confirmed that the main server had severed all external connections. It had walled itself off to protect the core data from unauthorized intrusion, which, ironically, was now Tiffany. I leaned back. The silence in the motel room was heavy, but the silence on my screen was louder. 5,000 trucks were effectively bricked. I opened a private browser tab and navigated to the company's internal Slack channel. I still had red access through a guest token I'd created for a vendor years ago and never deleted. #general, user Dave Warehouse NJ. Is the system down? Can't print balls. User Sarah Dispatch. My screen is black, just says contact admin. User Mike Security. Gates are locked. Drivers are honking. It's getting loud out here. User Tiffany Vanderbilt. Everyone calm down. It's just a server reset for the upgrade. Give it 5 mins. 5 minutes. I waited 10. #general, user Dave Warehouse NJ. Tiffany, it's been 10 mins. I have perishable goods on the dock. The freezer trucks aren't syncing temp data. If these compressors cycle off, we lose $50K in shrimp in an hour. User, Tiffany Vanderbilt. I'm calling IT. Stop messaging me. IT was Greg's nephew, a kid who installed Adobe Reader for a living. My burner phone buzzed. It wasn't an automated alert. It was a text. From Jerry. He must have remembered I had a personal number, even though this was a burner. He was smart. Jerry, Mon, if you're there, it's bad. She deleted the routing tables trying to restore a backup. Everything is gone. The drivers are rioting. Help. I looked at the text. I felt a twitch of sympathy for Jerry. He was collateral damage, but you can't cure a cancer without killing some healthy cells. I didn't reply. I closed the laptop lid. I stood up and walked to the window. The sun was rising over the highway. I watched a competitor's truck roll by, heading west. Run while you can, buddy, I whispered. Because nobody in this zip code is moving today. It was time for breakfast. I felt like waffles. By 9 o'clock a.m., the situation wasn't just a technical failure, it was a national news event waiting to happen. I was at the Waffle House next to the motel, eating pecan waffles and watching the chaos unfold on my phone. The internal Slack was a stream of consciousness horror novel. #ops emergency. User, regional MGRTX, we have trucks backed up onto the I-35 off-ramp. Highway patrol is threatening to tow. Who do I call? User, Tiffany Vanderbilt, do not let them tow, tell them it's a temporary glitches. User, regional MGRTX, a glitch? Tiffany, the driver apps have wiped themselves. They think they are in 1999. They can't legally drive without the ELD sync. We are dead in the water. I dipped a piece of waffle in syrup. Temporary glitches. That's what they always say right before the stock price tanks. I decided to check in on the Cloud Logic's integration. I pulled up their public API status on my phone. Green check marks across the board. Why? Because Tiffany hadn't even connected them yet. She had fired the pilot, me, before checking if the autopilot was installed. The coup, a man named Marcus who thought logistics was a brand of cologne, finally entered the chat. #ops emergency. User, Marcus COO, Tiffany, get in my office. Now. Why is the board chairman calling me asking why his golf clubs aren't tracking? Priorities, right? I watched the panic meter, a little script I wrote that analyzes the frequency of exclamation marks and all caps in the company chat. It was trending vertical. Then came the video. Someone leaked it to the general channel before Tiffany could lock it down. It was footage from the Nevada distribution center. It looked like a scene from Mad Max. Dozens of trucks jammed into the yard at impossible angles. Drivers standing in groups, smoking, yelling at security. A forklift operator sitting on a pallet of televisions looking at his phone. Nothing was moving. The conveyor belts were still. The silence of the machinery was eerie, cut only by the sound of angry men shouting. It was beautiful, in a grime-core, industrial decay sort of way. I decided it was time to poke the bear. I opened my email client on the burner phone. I composed a message, not to Tiffany, she was useless. I sent it to Marcus, the coup, and CC'd the board chairman. From Ghost in the Machine at ProtonMailCom to Marcus V at CompanyCom, Chairman B at CompanyCom subject. Your engine is missing. Gentlemen, you are currently running on a ghost system. The dashboard tells you you're driving, but the transmission is sitting on the side of the road. Your new leadership attempted to override root protocols without the physical encryption key. The system has interpreted this as a hostile act and initiated Protocol 0, total lockdown to protect data integrity. Your backups are corrupted because they were overwritten by the crash. Your vendor, Cloud Logix, cannot help you because they do not own the architecture. You are renting a car that you just drove into a lake. I suggest you check who actually owns the IP for the routing algorithms. Hint, check the employment contract dated 2004. Good luck, I hit send, then I ordered more coffee. Back on the Slack channel, the reaction was instantaneous. #ops emergency. User, Marcus COO, who is M? User, Tiffany Vanderbilt, it's Monica, she's hacking us. I told you she was vindictive. Call the police. Hacking? God, I hate that word. I wasn't hacking. I was simply not helping. There's a legal distinction. I could see the frantic attempts to trace the email. Good luck. It was routed through 3 VPNs and a server in Estonia. Then the phone calls started, not to me, to Tiffany. I had tapped into the VoIP system years ago for quality assurance read, listening to see who was talking smack about me. I tuned in. Tiffany, this is Marcus. What the hell is a physical encryption key? I don't know. Tiffany sounded shrill, on the verge of tears. She never gave me a key. She just threw her badge in my latte. She threw her badge in your... Jesus Christ, Tiffany, did you wipe her machine? Yes, IT wiped it immediately to secure the data. You idiot, Marcus roared. The audio peaked, crackling in my earbud. If the key was digital and you wiped it, it's gone. We are locked out. Well, get her back here. She's gone. Tiffany, and she just emailed the chairman, implies she owns the code. I smiled. The waitress came by to refill my coffee. You look happy today, Han, she said. I am, I said, putting a $20 bill on the table. I'm watching a train wreck and I'm the only one with a parachute. Sounds exciting. More syrup? Hit me. But the fun was just getting started, because now they were going to try to delete their mistakes. And that's when they always get caught. There is a specific kind of panic that sets in around 11 o'clock a.m. in a corporate crisis. It's the cover your ass phase. This is when the mission shifts from fix the problem to find a scapegoat. I was back in the motel room, blinds drawn, the screen illuminating my face in a cool blue glow. I watched as Tiffany began her purge. System log, user, T Vanderbilt VPO admin executing command, delete/log/morning audit user, T Vanderbilt VPO admin executing command, delete/HR record/termination M Geller user, T Vanderbilt VPO admin attempting to access, /legal/contracts/2004 archive. She was trying to erase the timeline. She wanted to make it look like the system failed before she touched it. She wanted to delete the record of my firing so they could claim I abandoned my post. Amateur, I whispered. She didn't know that the system logs she was deleting were just the front-end display logs. The kernel logs, the deep raw data that records the heartbeat of the server, were immutable, and they were being mirrored in real time to my external drive. Every time she hit delete, my drive saved a copy with a timestamp and a digital signature labeled evidence item hash. Evidence item 142, Tiffany deleting the email where she authorized the wiping of my laptop. Evidence item 143, Tiffany messaging CloudLogix asking if they can fake a backend restore. Then, HR entered the fray. Greg, the spineless wonder, sent an email to my personal account, the real one, not the burner. From Greg HR at CompanyCom to Monica G at gmail.com subject. Urgent. Return of company property / violation of policy Monica. It has come to our attention that you have retained critical access protocols in violation of your separation agreement. This constitutes theft of intellectual property and potential cyber terrorism. If you do not report to HQ immediately to unlock the system, we will involve federal authorities. Regards, Greg. Cyberterrorism, that was a new one. I laughed so hard I nearly choked on a pretzel. I didn't reply to Greg. Instead, I opened a file on my drive labeled insurance. Inside was a PDF of my original employment contract from 20 years ago. Back then, the company was a mess. They needed me desperately. I had leverage, and I had a lawyer who was paranoid. Clause 14b, intellectual property rights regarding custom architecture. The employee, Monica Geller, retains authorship of the source code for the core dispatch engine until such time as the company purchases the exclusive rights for a lump sum of. They never paid the lump sum. They forgot about it. For 20 years, they had been licensing the software from me, buried in my salary as a technology stipend. By firing me, they had terminated the license. Technically, they were the ones using pirated software now. I watched the Slack channel again. It was getting dark. #executive chat private hacked access. Marcus COO, Greg, did you get her? Greg HR, she's not responding. Tiffany says she's blocked us. Tiffany Vanderbilt, she sabotaged it. I swear, I walked in and it was already flashing red. I screenshotted that lie. Evidence item 156. Then a new player entered the game. The CFO. #executive chat. CFO Karen, guys, we have a problem. Walmart just called. They have 400 pallets of electronics sitting on our docks in our state. They are threatening to void the Q4 contract. That's $20 million. Marcus, fix this or you're all fired. The heat was rising. I could feel it through the internet connection. I checked the temperature sensors in the server room at HQ. They were rising too. Tiffany had turned off the AC to the server room to save power during the reboot. No, that couldn't be right. I checked the logs. User, T Vanderbilt VPO admin executed. /system reset hard AC override. She thought a hard reset meant turning everything off and on again. She had inadvertently killed the cooling units for the mainframe. Oh, Tiffany, I sighed. You're going to melt the processors. I could have stopped it. I could have sent a remote command to turn the fans back on. I looked at the temperature gauge. 85 degrees F, 90 degrees F. I took a sip of wine, let it burn. But then the text came. From the one person I actually respected. The general counsel, a shark named Alina. Alina, Monica, I know you're watching. I just read your contract. Clause 14b, you clever bitch, name your price. Finally, an adult in the room. Lena was the kind of lawyer who smiled when she gutted you. We had drinks once 5 years ago at a company holiday party. She told me, Monica, always keep a kill switch. In the code and in the contract, I guess she didn't think I'd actually use it against her client. I typed a reply on the burner phone. Me, hello, Alina. Nice of you to join the party. Tiffany breaks something expensive? Alina, she broke everything. The board is convened. I want your head on a spike. But I just explained to them that you legally own the spike. And the ground it's planted in. I could picture the boardroom. The mahogany table, the panic sweating, Tiffany crying in the corner, Marcus yelling, and Alina sitting there, cool as a cucumber, reading my 20-year-old contract over her reading glasses. Alina, they are threatening to sue for extortion, sabotage, CFA violations. Me, let them. I have the logs, Alina. Every keystroke. Tiffany tried to grant herself root access, failed, and then executed a wipe command. She destroyed company data. I simply revoked my license. The system locked down to protect my IP. It's a feature, not a bug. Alina, a feature that is costing us $1 million an hour. Me, then I suggest you hurry. Alina, what do you want? This was the moment. The moment I had fantasized about while fixing databases at 3 a.m. on Christmas Eve. The moment every invisible worker dreams of. I didn't want my job back. God, no. That bridge was burned, nuked, and salted. Me, 1. Immediate termination of Tiffany Vanderbilt for gross negligence and data destruction. 2. A formal apology issued to the entire company. 3. Payment of the lump sum for the IP transfer as per Clause 14b. Adjusted for inflation. Alina, how much? Me, $2.1 million, plus a consulting fee of $500/hour to turn it back on. Minimum 100 hours per paid. There was a long pause. The dots on the text message bubbled, then disappeared. Bubbled again. Alina, that's blackmail. Me, no, Alina, that's capitalism. Supply and demand. You have a demand for a working company. I supply the on switch. Alina, I need to take this to the board. Me, you have 1 hour. After that, the freezer units in the trucks run out of diesel. The shrimp goes bad and the price goes up to $3 million. I put the phone down. I checked the server room temperature again, 98 degrees F. The thermal throttling was kicking in. The servers were slowing down to protect themselves from melting. The entire digital brain of the company was suffering a heat stroke. I switched tabs to the Cloud Logic's vendor page. I found the contact for their CEO. I sent a quick anonymous tip. FYI, the company you are onboarding is currently melting down their hardware and has no legal right to the data they are promising you. Check your liability clause. Petty? Yes. Necessary? Absolutely. I wanted to make sure Tiffany had nowhere to hide. 30 minutes later, the phone rang. It wasn't a text, it was a voice call. Monica, Alina's voice was tight. They agreed to everything. Tiffany is being escorted out by security as we speak. Marcus is drafting the apology. The wire transfer is being prepped. When can you be here? I looked at the clock. It was 7 o'clock p.m. I'm 10 minutes away, I lied, but I'm not coming in until the wire hits my account. It's a $2 million wire, Monica. It takes time to clear. I know how Swift codes work, Alina. I built the billing system. Push it through the emergency vendor fund. I know you have it, Asai. Fine, I hung up. I stood up and went to the bathroom mirror. I looked tired. My hair was a mess. My mascara was smudged. I looked like a woman who had been to hell and back. I washed my face. I put on fresh lipstick, a shade called Victory Red. I brushed my hair. I put on my favorite leather jacket. I wasn't going back as an employee. I was going back as a consultant. And consultants don't wear business casual. They wear whatever the hell they want. My phone pinged. Bank of America, wire transfer received, $2,150,000 and 0 cents. I smiled. It was a cold, sharp smile. Time to go to work. The headquarters lobby was silent. Usually at 7:30 p.m., there would be janitors buffing the floors or a few late-night stragglers. Tonight, the air was thick with tension. I walked through the sliding glass doors. Security Mike was at the desk. He looked up, saw me, and his jaw dropped. Monica, I thought you were banned. I was upgraded, Mike, I said, flashing a guest pass I had printed myself at the hotel. I still had admin access to the badge printer, obviously. I didn't take the elevator. I took the stairs to the second floor, the executive suite. I wanted to hear the panic before I saw it. I turned the corner toward the main boardroom. The glass walls offered a perfect view. The board chairman, wrinkled fossil named Mr. Henderson, was shouting at Marcus. Alina was rubbing her temples. And there, standing by the elevator bank with a box of personal items, was Tiffany. She looked wrecked. Her mascara was running, her blazer was stained with coffee my doing, and she was sobbing into her phone. Daddy, they can't do this. It's her fault, she wailed. She looked up and saw me. The crying stopped instantly, replaced by pure venom. You, she hissed. You ruined everything. I stopped. I looked at her box. A stapler, a framed photo of herself, and a half-dead succulent. I didn't ruin anything, Tiffany, I said calmly. I just took my keys back. You're the one who tried to drive the car through a wall. I'm going to sue you, she spat. With what money? I asked. Daddy's stock just dropped 14% in 6 hours. I checked. Security guards, different ones, the serious ones in suits, stepped up behind her. Miss Vanderbilt, need to escort you out, she screamed as they led her away. I didn't watch. I turned and walked into the boardroom. The room went silent. 12 men and 1 woman. Alina turned to look at me. Gentlemen, I said, placing my external hard drive on the mahogany table with a heavy clunk. And Alina, Monica, Marcus stood up. He looked 10 years older than he had this morning. Fix it, now. Ah, I wagged a finger. Consultant, remember, tone. Marcus turned purple. He sat down. Mr. Henderson cleared his throat. Miss Geller, we appreciate you coming in on such short notice. I bet you do, I said. I pulled up a chair, Tiffany's chair actually, and sat down. I opened my laptop. Here is the situation. The system is in thermal lockdown. The database is fragmented, and the routing tables are currently encrypted with a 256-bit key that exists only in my head. Just turn it on, Henderson pleaded. I will, I said, but first the apology. We sent the email, Marcus gritted out. Not to me, I said, to the drivers, the warehouse guys, the people who have been sitting in 100-degree cabs for 12 hours wondering if they have a job. You send a company-wide blast, admitting that executive leadership errors caused the outage and promising full overtime pay for the downtime. Overtime? The CFO squawked. That's another $1 million. Cheaper than losing the Walmart contract, I reminded him. Do it. They looked at each other. They looked at the screen where the stock ticker was bleeding red. Marcus typed the email. He read it aloud. It was humiliating. It was perfect. Send it, I said. He hit enter. All right, I said. Let's boot this sucker up. I plugged the drive into the main presentation port. I projected my screen onto the massive wall monitor. Terminal window open. Command/restore root protocol password. I typed the password. It was, Tiffany is an idiot 123. I hit enter. The screen flooded with code, green text cascading like a digital waterfall. System restoring, cooling systems reactivated, database integrity verifying. Is it working? Henderson asked, his voice trembling. Give it a minute, I said, leaning back and putting my feet up on the table. The beast is waking up. She's going to be hungry. Watching a server farm come back online is like watching a city wake up after a blackout. First, the fans. A low hum started in the floor beneath us, vibrating through the expensive leather chairs. The temperature sensors on the screen began to drop. 98 degrees F, 95 degrees F, 90 degrees F. Then the nodes. One by one, the red dots on the map flickered and turned green. Atlanta, Chicago, Dallas. The network was healing. My phone buzzed. It was Jerry from Dispatch. Jerry, holy shit, Mon, the boards are lighting up. Are you doing this? Me, just doing a little consulting work, Jerry. Tell the boys to restart their tablets. Jerry, we just got the email from Marcus. Executive leadership errors? Did you make him write that? You're a legend. The floor is cheering. I smiled. The check was in the bank, but that text, that was the real payment. But outside the boardroom, the storm was breaking. Media had picked up the story. Not the technical glitch story, but the real story. The leaked video from the warehouse had gone viral on TikTok, and some enterprising journalist had found the executive error email posted on a trucker forum. CNN was playing on the corner TV in the boardroom. The headline chyron changed. Breaking, supply chain crisis linked to nepotism hire gone wrong. They showed a picture of Tiffany. It was from her Instagram, holding a glass of champagne on a yacht. Then they cut to the footage of the gridlocked trucks. The contrast was brutal. Oh God, Henderson moaned, putting his head in his hands. The brand reputation? Maybe you should have thought about that before you handed the keys to a toddler, I said, not looking up from my code. I was running the integrity checks. CloudLogix, the vendor, was trying to ping the system again. I blocked them permanently. Access denied. Vendor blacklisted. We'll need to find a new vendor, by the way, I told the room. These guys were scraping your customer data. I found a backdoor in their API. What? The CFO looked up. Yeah, they were selling your shipping routes to Amazon. I just patched it. Alina let out a short, incredulous laugh. So you saved us from a data breach while holding us hostage? I'm a professional, Alina. I take pride in my work. By 10 o'clock p.m., the system was at 90% capacity. Trucks were moving, the backlog was clearing, the crisis was over, but the atmosphere in the room was dead. These men knew that tomorrow the shareholders would be calling for blood, and since Tiffany was already gone, they were next. I stood up. I ejected my hard drive. Done, I said. The invoice for the first 100 hours is in your inbox. I'll be working remotely from now on. Don't call me unless something is on fire. Literally, I walked to the door. Monica, Henderson said. His voice was frail. Will you? Stay on, as CTO, we can offer. I stopped. I looked back at them. A table full of suits who had ignored me for 20 years until the machinery stopped working. No, I said, I don't want to be CTO. I want to be the person you're afraid to fire. I walked out. The next morning at 6:02 a.m., I was back at the Waffle House. Same booth. Different mood. I watched the tracking app on my phone. Map was a beautiful symphony of green arrows. Truck 4059 was unloading in Omaha. The shrimp had been saved. The Walmart contract was safe, unfortunately for the employees who had to deal with Walmart, but you can't win them all. The news cycle had moved on to the next disaster, but the trade papers were still feasting on the Vanderbilt carcass. Vanderbilt Logistics stock plummets. Board ousts CEO and COO in morning shakeup. Tiffany Vanderbilt issues apology via Instagram story, since deleted. I took a bite of my waffle. It tasted like victory. My phone buzzed, a notification from the bank. The wire had cleared. The funds were available. Account balance, $2,152,430.00. I transferred 10% to a separate account I set up for Jerry's legal defense fund, just in case they tried to come after the dispatchers. Wouldn't, but I look after my own. I sipped my coffee. I wasn't just a logistics director anymore. I was a strategic infrastructure consultant. It sounded fancy. It meant I could sit in my pajamas, monitor the servers for anomalies, and charge them $500 an hour to tell them to restart the router. I had one, but it wasn't the money. It was the silence. Not the silence of the broken system, but the silence of my own validation. For 20 years, I had been the invisible hand, the grease in the gears, the woman they walked past to get to the important people. Now they knew you don't mess with the mechanic while the car is moving. You don't fire the architect and expect the building to stand. I opened the Slack app one last time. #general, user, Jerry dispatch, system is green. We are rolling. Thanks M, user Dave Warehouse NJ, pallets are moving. God bless the backup drive. I closed the app. I deleted the burner number. I finished my coffee. I walked out to my beat-up Ford Explorer. Maybe I'd buy a new car, something fast, something agile, or maybe I'd just fix the transmission on this one. I like things that have scars. They run better. I started the engine. It coughed, sputtered, and then roared to life. A tag-girl, I patted the dashboard. I merged onto the highway, slipping in behind a massive 18-wheeler hauling steel. I watched its mud flaps sway. I knew the driver's name, Stan, his location, I-70 westbound, and exactly when he'd arrive. The world kept turning. The goods kept moving. And somewhere in a penthouse, a princess was crying over spilled milk. Me, I was just driving. Big thanks for watching, you sneaky seniors. Subscribe to keep the coffee pot brewing revenge. Your ex-colleagues won't know what hit 'em.